Welcome back to Cast. Today we are talking about the power of annual goals and how you can increase your chances of actually achieving them by following the Smarter Goals framework. Before we get into that, who are we? My name is Brooks Hitsfield with Seven Sons and Grace Cart. Each week I'm joined by my brother Blaine. We're in the business of selling pasture-raised meat products online. That all happens at sevensons.net. And as you can imagine, selling fresh and frozen food products online has its own unique challenges. So something else that we do is we developed our own custom website and e-commerce platform called Grace Cart. It's kind of like Shopify, except instead of trying to serve every industry and build tools around that, we're 100% focused on serving people like me and you, food producers. You can learn more about that at gracecart.com. We might talk a little bit more about it in the episode. But Blaine, getting into what we're talking about today, I think most people listening would agree that there's value in making goals, writing them down, but also everyone listening is probably very, very busy people. And I know in business, things change very, very fast. So actually being able to set goals and stay consistent with them, it's a lot easier said than done. So can you maybe start off by sharing, though, what you believe is at stake if we just kind of wave the white flag and don't put intentionality into this and instead kind of address priorities based on what's most urgent and, based off of really just urgency and gut?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to recognize that any inaction when it comes to setting goals is waving the white flag. Whether you think you're waving it or not, inaction when it comes to setting goals is doing just that. And so what's at stake, Brooks? I think as business owners, which everyone listening is an entrepreneur, we're business owners, we cannot lose sight of that goal of the business that we're starting and the journey that we're on. That is ultimately our goal, is to create a higher quality of life and standard for what our life is. That the business is meant to serve our family. That's the goal, not the other way around. And when you lose sight of that and you're not intentional about those goals, that's what will happen. Your business will rule over you, your family life. You'll be busy. You'll be tied into the weeds, stuck in the mud, doing, you will spin out of control, and you won't have control over your time and quality of life. So the long-term goal of your business is to serve the needs of your family, and to obviously you're serving your customer, but the necessary result of doing that is to serve your family, and we can't lose sight of that. Or else we might as well go back and just find a 9-to-5 job, because it's far less stressful and could possibly be more rewarding for your family.
So yes, obviously this is a very important thing to do and make sure you're prioritizing. But something I want to continue to stress, and really is the genesis of this episode as we're coming towards the end of the year, is that setting goals, it sounds like it's, we hear it all the time. People preach it very often, preach the whole aspect of writing them down, but there is actually a skill level aspect to this. I know just as we kind of got into business and I started putting more intentionality to this, over time, I've gotten better and better after we have following some people, getting advice around this, at actually setting goals that are achievable. So it is really almost a skill and a muscle that you have to practice, and you have to put time into this. And over time, you'll see that it improves. But the biggest thing is actually doing the work.
Yeah, anyone can set a goal or come up with a wish, a thing they hope will happen. But it takes skill and practice to actually set achievable goals. And there is a strategy to doing that, was what we've learned. Because what can happen too often is we start at the beginning of the year, we're ambitious, we set goals, but we don't set them well, and we fail at them, and then we become a little bit cynical with ourselves that this is kind of just a waste of time. The chances of me achieving my goals, I've done this before, and I get discouraged, and so you almost have a little bit of a discouragement and maybe a fear to even try to set goals, because we've been disappointed too many times. And really, we need to get back to it and understand there is a skill set, there is a strategy, and that's what we're sharing today.
So what we're walking through is the Smarter Goals framework. You've probably heard of SMART goals before. This is taking it a little bit further. This is a framework that we picked up by a business coach of ours that we've followed closely. He's a well-known, respected New York Times best author, Michael Hyatt. And this is something that, since again we have implemented personally, but then also tried to get this framework passed down to other team members and family members, and it's made a world of difference. So do you just want to just go ahead and jump in? It's an acronym, so it starts with S.
Yes. So the first S is for specific. So too many times we set broad goals that aren't pinpointed enough at one single thing. So Brooks, you want to give an example of maybe a goal that's just not specific enough compared to something that is?
Yeah, so we're going to go through each one of these. We're going to walk through a bad example of a goal that touches on each letter here, and then a good example. So a bad example would be something that's just too vague. Like, maybe in our shoes, it's, hey, this year I want to grow e-commerce revenue. But that's just not specific enough. You need to tie it back to maybe some sort of action and as we're going to learn, there's other things that you can tie into this as we go as well. But maybe a better version of that would be, hey, let's this year launch a shipping program to grow e-commerce revenue.
So you're specific. You're launching a shipping program, very specific.
Another example is if you're trying to maybe improve a skill. So, that copywriting and email marketing is important for you and your business. So a bad example of a goal would be, get better at copywriting. A better example would be to take the CopyCure copywriting online course to improve your copywriting skills.
Same can be true in any personal goal. So you get healthier in 2022. How about run 1 mile a day on the treadmill every day, or 4 days a week, or something like that? That would be a specific goal.
So the next letter is M.
M. So that stands for measurable. So there's really no way if you're on your way to achieving your goal or not unless you can measure it. So any good goal that's achievable has to be measurable. You have to know, when does it start? When does it end? Am I halfway there yet? And you have to be able to monitor that.
Yep. So this really just builds on top of that being specific, but more so trying to tie a number to it and put guardrails on and bumpers on whether or not you know where you're at with the goal or you've achieved the goal and you can actually check it off. That's the whole thing of not being very specific, not making your goal measurable. How do you know when you can actually say, yes, I did this? Because when you get into it, sometimes you'll set a goal, you'll get down the path, and then all of a sudden realize that, there's other things that you can do on top of this, whether it's a project or some sort of habit you're trying to achieve. And if you're not specific at knowing when does the goal actually get checked off, then you're going to, again, just get discouraged because you don't know where your progress is at throughout the process.
Yeah, so going back to let's grow e-commerce revenue by launching a shipping program. So to make it measurable, we would say, let's grow e-commerce revenue by 15% or maybe 20%. By launching a shipping program. So now it's measurable. Or maybe you could put a number to it, grow it by $100,000 this year by launching a shipping program. So it's measurable. You know if you're achieving it or not.
So third letter here is A.
Yep. A is for actionable.
Yep.
All right. So a good one with this example that we're talking about, with launching the shipping program, that one is actionable. We're launching something. We're starting something. Another example would be again the example I shared earlier. Get healthier in 2022, or lose weight in 2022. Well, how about run 1 mile per day in order to lose 20 pounds by the end of 2022. So there it's measurable. I'm losing 20 pounds and I'm running. It's actionable. Run 1 mile per day. Walk 1 mile per day.
So specifically, that's the key here is when you actually write out this goal, trying to make it begin with an action verb.
Yes.
So run, launch.
No state of being things. Be better, get healthier, whatever.
Yes.
Those are not actionable. So you have to be able to take, if you're going to set a goal, it has to be something you can take action on. So.
All right, we'll keep going through. Next letter is R. I'm like a picture. I just pitch the letter to you, and then you can drive it home and swing.
So the next one is risky. So if you've studied the SMART goal framework before, I think the idea here is that you don't want to make it you want to make it attainable, and that's important to think about. But Michael Hyatt teaches us to use the term risky. So. We don't want it too easy. If it's too easy, a goal that's too easy to achieve isn't very exciting. And so you want it to be in that risky zone that it's going to take some effort to do this. And if I achieve it, I'm excited about it. So you have to ask yourself, if you achieve the goal, the measurable goal, does it excite you? Does it get you out of bed in the morning? It has to be risky, a little bit risky. It's going to make you stretch. It has to bump you a little bit outside your comfort zone.
Yep.
And that's the key here. But then balance that by not going all the way to the delusional zone, double, quadruple e-commerce revenue. Okay, well, maybe if you have reasonable knowledge to believe that you can do that, then maybe. But if you're just kind of pie in the sky, so don't make it too easy, make it risky.
Yeah. If you want to dig deeper into this framework and really other productivity tips, Michael Hyatt has a book and a course called Free to Focus, which I believe he goes into this framework and a lot of other things, really, was just trying to help manage your time better and get more done with less effort. Yeah. And I pulled a phrase of his where he's talking about this risky aspect of setting goals. And, what he says and teaches in his material is that what he tries to do is just go right up to the edge of his comfort zone, and then just step right over it. So in order to know that you've checked the risky box, it has to be out of your comfort zone. But again, not too far that it's delusional and you get discouraged by not achieving your goals consistently because you just make them more of a wish without a solid plan to get there.
Yeah, good.
All right, so this is kind of it's a hyphenated aspect. So it's T.
So in the SMARTER acronym, so yep. T is for time keyed.
Yep.
Right. So the key here is that there has to be a date in which this process of starting to achieve the goal and when it ends, it's locked in with a time. So so going back to launching the shipping program to grow e-commerce revenue by 20%. We would put in there, we're gonna launch that program by let's say March, beginning of March.
Yep.
So there's my time keyed.
So the big thing here is that it holds you accountable to progress. If you're not putting deadlines and dates on things, then you're really going to fall back into that phase of just prioritizing whatever is the most urgent or whatever your gut tells you that needs your attention in the moment. Where here, if you're putting a deadline on your biggest goals, it makes sure that you're, again, more likely to prioritize those important things and really that's the whole aspect here, is using this framework to create annual goals, which are the most important things that you want to achieve throughout the year. Yeah. So that's the whole idea of a deadline, so you don't fall back into the minutia of business and the urgency and the things that just come up from a day-to-day basis.
So not only a time keyed for a start date, but also an end date. Like, when am I planning to have this this goal achieved? So it'll be different for every goal. So you always want to have a goal of when you're starting it, and maybe it's by the end of the year you want to achieve that 20% growth. So maybe at the end of the year. But here's a tip. Be careful about setting all of your time keyed goals to basically come to due by the end of the year. If everything's due at the end of the year, that's not a good strategy for achieving those goals and sequencing those throughout the year. You should have goals that are ending and that have deadlines kind of spread evenly throughout the year, or else you get overwhelmed. This
is the part of the skill that I think gets developed over time as you continue to go through this process. Something else that Michael Hyatt preaches a lot is limiting the number of goals that you put on yourself each year. So I think his range is generally 7 to 10, not much more than 10.
For the entire year.
Yeah,
but then not working on more than 2 to 3 at one given time.
Correct. So sequencing those in your quarter specifically to make sure that you're not spread too thin. Again, it's just the power of focus.
What always derailed my goals, Brooks, is I used to set goals and all of them have a deadline by the end of the year. So I'd start off the year, and by the end of the year, I want this. No, you've got to be smarter about sequencing and slicing things up and having deadlines throughout the year.
And one aspect on that I've found hard is because as we've been going through this, we've been giving examples. You can probably tell that we have some goals that are have a measurable point to where you can check it off, and it's more of a project. It gets done. But other goals are kind of like a habit. You were talking about, the personal goal of trying to lose weight, right?
Yeah,
Where you're going to do that by trying to develop this habit of running a mile every 4 days or so. So, if you have a lot of habit goals, something I struggled with one year when I had a lot of those is, well, how does that not have an end date of the end of the year? And where do you even place an end date on something like that? So maybe you want to share a little bit about.
So here's what I did. So if it's a habit goal like running, I would say, okay, I'm going to start running 1 mile a day. I'm going to start doing that, let's say the 1st of March, and I'm going to do it for 60 days. And so once I've done it for 60 days, then that's what's going to allow me to check this habit goal off. I consider that habit fully installed if I've done it for 60 days.
And if you read the book, Free to Focus, I know Michael Hyatt goes into kind of the science behind of when, research that's been done on when a habit is kind of locked in. And I think it's in that 90-day period or something like that.
60 to 90 days, yeah. It's more than 30 typically.
So once you get to that aspect, maybe that's a good place to check off those habit-related goods and make sure that it's just doesn't have this ever-ending, perpetual date to it, and it ends at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we spent some time on that one. Moving on to second to last is E.
Yeah, E is for exciting, and so this is just an easy test, guys. You write out that goal, you take it through this framework, but you have to ask yourself, am I excited about this? And maybe it's something that needs to be done regardless, but you're just not excited about it. So that would be considered, Hyatt teaches us to consider that a project. So it's a necessary project that has to get done, but don't elevate it all the way to one of these top 10 goals of the year. So I think that's the real test there.
This is the hardest one for me because, especially if you're in business, right, or an entrepreneur, there's just things that have to get done, and that they're going to move the needle forward. But is it really that exciting? Like, an example is a few years ago, we went on this project of implementing a warehouse management, inventory, costing, traceability software.
Exciting! Oh,
and goodness, that did not fit my desires on activity if I had a full choice over what we're doing. But it was something that we knew we needed to spend some time on. So it's difficult, and I think that is kind of the key of making sure that you're not just looking at your annual goals and saying, okay, where's my time going to go for the year, and make those, try to spread your time out among the projects and actually put those on the pedestal of being a goal of the most important things you want to get done for the year. Or else you end up with things on there that just, it does have to get done. It's not exciting, and you're more likely to procrastinate on.
Yeah, you need the fuel of excitement to really increase the likelihood that you will achieve these big, important, exciting goals in your life. So,
and this is one of those areas, I know we've talked in the past about delegation, and we might link to that episode, but especially if you have a team, or even if you don't, there's creative ways to outsource projects to other people who have the skills and maybe are better and actually enjoy doing the project I just mentioned that, we didn't as much, that you can try to enlist some help for, whether it's a contractor, consultant, or of course, obviously on your team. So if it's a project, it's not exciting to you, maybe it is to someone else in your business or someone else you can hire in.
Yeah. Yep. So the last letter is R in the SMARTER framework there. So R is for relevant. And that's just kind of the last. It's kind of a gut check, but it's also just just thinking about the goal practically. Is this goal relevant to either this season of my life? So as I'm a dad of 5 kids. We have the 6th on the way here in February, and we have a couple different businesses that are running here. This probably would not be the right season of life, Brooks, for me to say I'm gonna go back to college. And get some degree. Like, insane. Like, just so, like, be smart about this and make sure it's relevant, and make sure your goals align with your values. What else would you add here? Season of life, values.
I think the big thing here is this is a very practical one, and it's really just a major pitfall probably to avoid that I know a lot of us have probably, especially when you're near transitions and major life chapters in your life. It can get really easy to kind of blur the lines on, like, knowing, okay, have I fully stepped out of this chapter? Am I in the other one? And that's where it's really important, I think, to recognize and again decide where you're going to focus and make sure your goals align with the season of life, the chapter of life that you're currently in.
And another one, is it relevant to you? So we need to be careful about letting other people's ideas impose themselves onto our top 10 goals list. So yeah, maybe you have someone, whether it's your boss or whatever, whoever, someone wants you to do something, and it may not be exactly something exciting to you, and it really just may be their goal for you. And not that you're not doing things that other people need you to do, but be careful about letting those slip onto your most exciting goals of the year.
Yeah, big thing here is probably again making some tough decisions, deciding what's really important to you. So in a use case or example like that, where you feel like a lot of your priorities are being, maybe if you're in a job, they're being pushed on you from someone else's priorities. Well, then maybe the aspect there to make your goals more relevant is to do something different with your life and actually make force yourself into turn the chapter. That way your goals can align with things that are relevant to where you actually want to go. Looking at, we're talking about annual goals, but looking further ahead than that, 5-10 years of your life. So sometimes it's a tough decision that needs made in order to position your time towards things that are actually going to be exciting and relevant to you.
One of the biggest recommendations I would have, Brooks, is I don't have the planner right in front of me here, but we use a planner where we keep track of these goals. And the planner that we use is Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Planner, and it has all this information in it as far as how to step through this smarter goal framework, and it really keeps you disciplined, because we covered a lot, and there's a lot to think about, but that's part of the skill, learning the skill. These are all tactics and strategies that are part of that skill, and if you apply these over and over, you will notice that your ability to set and achieve goals will improve over time, just like any other skill set. So
yeah, that's final thoughts. I think the number one core reason probably that people don't achieve their goals is just due to a lack of visibility. We write them down, especially talking about annual goals, right?
Yeah.
You write them down at the beginning of the year. You're thinking New Year's resolution. What's the big next thing for my business? And you get all excited about that, but then you just completely lose visibility on them. And then by the end of the year, you find that note, you pull it back up when it's time to set the next year's goal. It's like, man, what did I write down here? You can't even recognize and remember what was there. So the planner has really helped solve that, because it's a daily planner, and it walks through really a system of being able to take and step you through writing through those annual goals, following this framework. Keep visibility in there because you're using it daily, and they help you break those annual goals down to, hey, what am I focusing on this quarter? What's going to be the three biggest things I'm going to do this week to try to make progress towards those goals I'm focusing on, all the way down to what you're doing daily to then point back to what's happening weekly. So great framework. We will link to that in the resources below. Also provide a link to the Free to Focus course and book.
Our entire team has been through the course. Our entire management team uses the planners as well. And one of the last things I want to say, Brooks, is this is some of the most highest leverage activities you can do with your time, is setting goals, especially at the beginning of the year, especially if you have a team or just a small team. Getting them around those goals, getting visibility to them. It's like setting a budget, very high leverage work.
One of the biggest things in business is developing your competitive advantages. And this is a huge competitive advantage if you can figure out skills and develop the skill of getting more done with less effort, with less time.
Yes.
That is something that is a skill. And I know this book and some of the stuff we're talking about here has tremendously helped us. We'll link to them in the bottom of this episode, wherever you're listening or watching this here. Let us know. We're here at year end. By the time this episode goes out, what are some of your big goals coming up in 2022? We want to hear about those. Share them in the comments below. Maybe that'll add some inspiration for other people watching and listening as well. So thanks a lot for watching. Take care. We'll talk again soon.